Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a look at Lori Chavez-DeRemer.
Oh,
You probably know her as President Trump's newly confirmed Secretary of Labor.
right.
But we're going way beyond the headlines today. We've got a whole bunch of sources to dig through, news articles, political analysis, even some video interviews and social media posts to try and get a complete picture.
Sounds pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, our mission is to figure out who Chavez-DeRemer really is, what she stands for, and what her appointment could mean for the American workforce.
Big questions for sure.
Yeah.
I think her journey to this position is a great place to start.
Okay.
It's been a rapid ascent,
Mm.
leaving a lot of political analysts wondering how she managed to climb the ranks so quickly.
Yeah, it really is something. From Happy Valley City Council to mayor, then becoming the first Republican woman to represent Oregon in the House, and now Secretary of Labor, all in just a handful of years.
Right, and that's what makes it so interesting. This isn't the typical path to such a high-profile position.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you wonder what specific experiences she's bringing to the table.
Like what?
Well, for example, her father was a Teamster,
Hmm.
and she was the first in her family to graduate college.
I see.
How might those experiences shape her approach to labor issues?
That's a great question. And speaking of her approach, it seems like she's known for her ability to build bridges and work across party lines, but her confirmation process also sparked quite a bit of debate even within the GOP,
Yeah, her support for the PRO Act definitely raised some eyebrows.
which usually has strong backing from Democrats.
Right, because of its aim of strengthening unionization. You don't typically see someone in her position supporting that.
Agreed, it definitely shook things up. But here's where things get really interesting. That same stance led to some surprising endorsements, like Teamsters President Sean O'Brien.
Oh, wow.
A major force in the labor movement actually came out publicly in support of her confirmation.
It really speaks to the unusual coalition building we've seen from the Trump administration, bringing together individuals with differing viewpoints to advance a particular agenda.
So let's talk about that agenda. In her confirmation speech, Chavez-DeRemer laid out some of her top priorities. She emphasized education pathways, workforce training, and creating what she called a level playing field.
Okay.
But she also acknowledged the economic anxieties many Americans are feeling right now, things like rising prices, stagnant wages, and uncertainty about the future.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there.
Definitely. Given the potential roadblocks she faces navigating a complex regulatory environment, balancing worker rights with business interests, not to mention the ever-looming impact of automation on jobs, do you think she can actually deliver on these promises?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's a lot to tackle,
Yeah.
especially with skepticism coming from both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And we can't ignore the elephant in the room, the Trump factor.
Right.
Some sources directly link her track record to President Trump's, especially on sensitive topics like abortion.
Given President Trump's history on labor issues, do you see any potential for conflict between them?
It's certainly a possibility. While attack ads claim she supported a national abortion ban, Chavez-DeRemer herself has stated that she wouldn't support such a ban and considers abortion a states' rights issue.
So how does this position her in relation to Trump's broader agenda?
Well, it's still quite early in her tenure.
Hmm?
It's hard to definitively say how closely her policies will align with his in the long run or what specific points of friction might arise.
I see.
But remember that pre-election interview we saw where she emphasized those everyday concerns of her constituents, public safety, quality, education, affordability?
Right.
These are what we might call kitchen table issues that tend to resonate with voters.
They do, and it makes you wonder how she plans to bridge the gap between those concerns and the realities of Washington politics. Will she actually be able to deliver on those promises, or will this just be another case of all talk and no action?
It's too soon to tell for sure, but it's definitely something worth keeping an eye on. Her success or failure could have significant impact on American workers and the future direction of the country. So far, we've covered Chavez-DeRemer's swift rise, her seemingly contradictory stances on certain issues, and the challenges and opportunities she faces in this new role, all while considering the ever-present influence of President Trump.
Right, and we can't forget about that unusual coalition of supporters she's managed to gather, further blurring the lines between traditional political alliances.
It's like we're watching a political drama unfold in real time.
It certainly has all the elements of a compelling narrative.
It does.
Yeah, it is. And it really highlights why these deep dives are so important.
Absolutely.
It's not just about skimming the surface, but digging into the details, understanding the context and making connections to help you make sense of it all.
Precisely. With so much information out there, it can feel overwhelming trying to separate fact from fiction.
Sure.
So let's go back to Chavez-DeRemer's background for a moment. Her father, a teamster, instilled in her a strong work ethic and the importance of fair treatment for workers. This narrative could be quite powerful, especially in today's political landscape.
Absolutely. It's a narrative she seems to embrace. Remember that line from her confirmation speech?
Let's see.
She said, "The fair pay and benefits he received ensured our family's stability and security."
Right, right.
It feels like she's intentionally connecting with a specific demographic working-class Americans who are struggling to make ends meet.
Exactly. She's tapping into a sense of nostalgia, a longing for a time when hard work was rewarded with a decent living. It's a potent message for those who feel left behind by the current economic system.
Hmm.
But then there's her support for the PRO Act.
Right.
At first glance, it seems contradictory. Why would a Republican-backed legislation that traditionally benefits unions?
It does seem counterintuitive. If we consider the nuances of the PRO Act, what might her support for it tell us about her approach?
Well, the PRO Act aims to strengthen unionization, which some argue could lead to higher wages and better working conditions for all workers, not just those in unions.
Okay.
Think about the potential consequences. If businesses have to provide better conditions and wages to compete with unionized workplaces, then wouldn't everyone benefit?
I see. That would certainly align with her focus on creating a level playing field.
Exactly.
Could this be a calculated political strategy to appeal to a broader base of voters, including some union members who might typically vote Democrat?
It's certainly a possibility. It's a strategic move, but let's not forget the potential drawbacks. Supporting the PRO Act might alienate some of her more conservative constituents and those in the business community who view it as anti-business.
Definitely. There are those who believe that any efforts to strengthen unions threaten the free market and could lead to economic problems.
Exactly. This tension between worker rights and business interests is a key challenge she'll face as Secretary of Labor. And let's not forget about the looming issue of automation. How can we address the potential job losses caused by robots and AI?
It's a real concern, and not just for blue-collar jobs. Many white-collar jobs are also vulnerable to automation. What concrete steps could Chavez-DeRemer take to address this challenge? What are some of the options being discussed?
Well, one approach is focusing on retraining and upskilling workers, equipping them for jobs that will be in demand in the future.
Like what?
Imagine programs that help people transition from manufacturing jobs to roles in tech or renewable energy.
So providing people with the tools they need to thrive in a rapidly changing job market.
Precisely. Another approach involves exploring policies like universal basic income, which could offer a safety net for those displaced by automation.
Interesting. So there are some options on the table, but it sounds like none of them are easy or without controversy.
Absolutely. And the political realities can't be ignored. Chavez-DeRemer is operating in a highly polarized environment where any proposed policy will likely face intense scrutiny and opposition.
Right. It sounds like a tightrope walk trying to navigate all of that. And then there's the ever-present Trump factor to consider.
Right? We can't disregard the possibility of conflict between her stated objectives and President Trump's agenda.
Especially on issues like trade and immigration, which could have a huge impact on American workers. How do you see her navigating those potential points of friction?
It's a complex situation. The political landscape is already incredibly volatile, and any perceived misstep or betrayal of either her base or President Trump's base could have major consequences.
Yeah.
But remember her emphasis on kitchen table issues, public safety, good education affordability.
Okay.
If she can successfully connect those concerns to her policies, she might be able to navigate this challenging political landscape.
That's a big if, though, right?
It is. It raises an important question for you. Do you think Chavez-DeRemer can actually bridge the gap between her words and the reality of her actions? Can she deliver on those promises and make a real difference in the lives of American workers? Or will those promises get lost in the whirlwind of politics? Something to consider as we enter the final part of our deep dive on Lori Chavez-DeRemer.
Yeah, it's a question a lot of folks are asking themselves, and for good reason. The stakes are high, and the political landscape is, anything but predictable. But I think there's another layer to this that we haven't really explored yet, something that might help us understand her actions better.
I agree. We've talked about Chavez-DeRemer's background, her policies, the obstacles she faces.
Right.
But what about her personal motivations? What truly drives her?
That's a really interesting point. We can get so caught up in the policy details that we forget that there's a human being at the center of all of this, someone making decisions based on their own values and beliefs.
Exactly. Understanding her motivations could shed some light on her decision-making process. And, her potential path as Secretary of Labor.
Okay, so where should we start?
Well, her consistent emphasis on bipartisanship and her willingness to work across the aisle is a good place to start.
Okay.
It suggests a desire to find common ground, a quality that seems increasingly rare in today's political climate.
It's true, and it's something she's been commended for throughout her career, from her time as mayor to her work in Congress. But how can we determine if this is genuine or just a calculated political strategy?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
Is she genuinely committed to finding solutions that benefit everyone? Or is this just a carefully crafted image designed to, advance her career?
Right. Maybe her focus on those kitchen table issues can offer some clues.
Okay.
She constantly talks about things that directly affect everyday Americans' jobs, wages, healthcare, education.
You're right. And that suggests a real desire to make a difference in the lives of working families. It's not just empty rhetoric. She seems to have a deep understanding of the challenges people are facing.
Yeah, we also can't overlook her background as a successful businesswoman.
True.
She built a thriving business with her husband, and she's spoken about fostering a business-friendly environment.
Which could potentially clash with her support for unions and worker rights.
Hmm.
It's another one of those contradictions we've been discussing.
Right. How do you make sense of those seemingly opposing viewpoints?
It definitely complicates things,
Mm-hmm.
but it also suggests a pragmatic approach to policymaking.
Mm-hmm.
She understands the needs of both workers and businesses and is trying to find solutions that benefit both sides.
Okay.
But we can't forget about the potential influence of President Trump. He's known for his transactional approach to politics. So is it possible that Chavez-DeRemer's actions are at least in part guided by his agenda?
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. We can't ignore the power dynamics at play. Is she making decisions based on what she truly believes is best, or is political expediency a factor?
Exactly. It's a delicate balance, and it's something we need to consider as we assess her performance as Secretary of Labor.
For sure.
So what does this all mean for our listeners? What should they take away from this deep dive?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that Lori Chavez-DeRemer is a complex and multifaceted figure. She has a compelling personal story, ambitious goals, and faces some, truly significant challenges.
Like a political thriller unfolding before our eyes.
It really is. And that's why it's so crucial to stay informed, think critically, and avoid rushing to judgment. We need to be careful consumers of information, especially in such a politically charged environment.
Absolutely.
Because in the end, we just don't know how this will all play out. Will Chavez-DeRemer be a force for positive change in the lives of American workers, or will she succumb to the pressures of the political machine?
That's the question, isn't it? Only time will tell. But by paying close attention, digging deeper, and engaging in thoughtful discussion, we can all play a role in shaping the future of our country. It's up to each of us to stay informed, ask tough questions, challenge assumptions, and keep the conversation going.
Well said. And that concludes our deep dive into Lori Chavez-DeRemer. But remember, the story doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring, stay curious, and share your own insights with us on social media using #TheDeepDive. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.